I wanted to talk to my friends in the design community, but there wasn't really a platform for doing that. There's this wonderful opportunity where design ethics gets concrete when a young designer looks to an older designer and asks, is this okay? Like, not just quality, but is this all right that we're doing this? The importance of finding and building community really quickly is like an essential thing.
The moderation, when people have asked, do you mind if I... Nah, I'm not so sure.
No.
What's good, everybody, and welcome back to Hyperfocus. Today, I am joined by Sean Loomis.
Hi.
It's fantastic to have you here. Sean is somebody who I've known for quite a long time, actually, and I've wanted to have you on the channel for a long time, and now he's present, and we have some pretty interesting topics that we're going to go through. But before we jump into things, don't forget to subscribe and potentially like this video before we've even started talking, because I know you're going to enjoy this one. We have 3 topics today that we're going to be talking about. Those topics are community, design ethics, and also giving back. So I'd also just like to take a moment to introduce you for the people out there who do not know who you are. Sean describes himself as a designer of products and experiences. He's a Hamburg-based freelance designer and strategist. Sean welcomes complexity in design projects, a lover of systems, process nerd, a people connector, a facilitator, and a believer in the power of community. Does that sound about right?
I basically took all of the LinkedIn titles that I had and just mashed them together. Like, designer titles are already ridiculous. I thought just throw everything in there, see what happens.
It sounds great. It sounds great. So actually, let's jump straight into one of the first things, which is really close to your heart, which is community. You are currently running the Hamburg Design Community, which is a Slack-based community to bring designers together. Would you maybe like to kind of start to explain a little bit of your motivation and why that came about?
Sure. Yeah, I think, so I'm originally from America. I came from Seattle to Hamburg about 10 years ago. And for me, being in a foreign place, like when you're uprooted from the place that you know, the importance of finding and building community really quickly is like an essential thing. Otherwise, you don't really have a chance. Like, you feel very isolated. And so I kind of actionistically looked for opportunities in Hamburg at the time, which was 2012. We were talking about like iPhone generation 3 or 4, and most people still not really getting what digital product design is. And I remember the only thing I found at the time was this Behance group. Like, we all know Behance, this platform where that used to be the place where you showed your work and talked about what you did. And people were meeting together. It was like multidisciplinary. You had photographers and designers. And it was cool, but the person who organized that at some point also moved away. And so I thought, goodness, like what happens after this? And there were a few people that popped up. There are great people in our community who kind of took action and wanted to start doing like events or roundtables. You had This Happened Hamburg, you had Shapes, you had UX Roundtable, like Creative Mornings, all of these places where people love to meet. And that often comes from this passion to connect and bring people together. But at the same time, those happen once every 6 months or 4 months, and there's so much life that happens in between that. And I was always curious, like, what can that look like if you have a conversation and a dialogue happening on a more continuous basis? I wanted to talk to my friends in the design community, but there wasn't really a platform for doing that. And so I thought, well, I'm just going to do it myself then. I was actually inspired when I went back to Seattle to see people, design friends and colleagues that I studied with. They told me about a Seattle Designers Slack.
Okay. Well, that makes sense,
right?
Why
don't we have this? Yeah. And so like there were like 4,000 or 5,000 people there, and that's like the place where people found jobs, heard about events going on, and I just thought that is so easy as well. Like, why don't we have that? So the evolution of that was really like, I don't know, like inside of a night, I just thought, we need this. I'm not going to ask anyone for permission. I'm just going to do it. I didn't even know if there were other Slacks in our city at the time. And in a night, I built a logo. I created a Slack, and I invited like 20 to 40 people, and just added them. They're like, "What are we doing?" And oh yeah, this makes sense. But it started off kind of slow, and pretty much right after we started that, the pandemic like hit, like probably I think 2 or 3 moments after that, the months after that. And so the evolution was 30 to 40 people talking, enjoying conversation, and then suddenly grows to like 100 people, and then the pandemic, and everyone's like craving community, connection, conversation. And so it like went from 100 in January of 2020 to like 300 2 months later. And just like this explosion of people who were like, I just need contact with my friends. And then the opposite actually started happening as well. Like it got this huge peak of explosion. And then like midway into 2020, people were like, oh, screw digital. I'm so tired. I'm so burnt out with like online meetings and video calls. So Slack engagement actually went down a little bit.
Okay.
And yeah, it was this really weird adverse trend, and I think there are a lot of learnings that come out of that. But yeah, now we're up to like almost 1,000 people in the community, and it's grown and evolved and been through different seasons for sure. But that's kind of like where it started.
I have to say, I mean, it's incredible that there's 1,000 people. I just want to kind of backtrack just to kind of share a bit my experience as well as being a foreigner, being in this city and not knowing anybody. We all have our own journeys, and I was here just a little bit before you. So I really felt that kind of loneliness of kind of lost connections with other designers. I was getting it a bit as a freelancer, so that's how I was making my community. But once I left that agency or that place of work, then I took some friendships with me. But you know, the whole scene was only subjective to who you knew. So I always felt like Hamburg was really, really small. And I always wished that it was bigger. Because I think we both know it's a beautiful city, and it's been very good to both of us. And there's so much potential. And I think over the last couple of years, like pre-pandemic as well, I saw more of insurgence of this being a destination. And I've always been a champion of this city, because if you believe in what you do, I think there's a space for that. And there is a community to help. And us old dogs, you know what I mean, who've been through the trenches, been through the ranks, are there to openly share our experiences. So I'm, for one, super grateful like that you set up the community. I'm sure there's many other people as well.
Yeah, but it's a fascinating thing because there are like global design communities as well, right? That you could be a part of and try to follow and minorly engage with. And there are much larger Slacks on a design network basis. There's like the design system Slack with like 10 to 12,000 people. It's sponsored by Google. There was a Figma, Friends of Figma Slack. They're like all of these global things, but the chance to actually meet in the city with some of these people, have a coffee, learn from their experience, it seems so far removed. And it takes a really special, like a certain type of person to have that gumption to be like, hey, random person, I would love to talk with you. And this makes it much more accessible. Actually, we've been really strict about allowing anyone else from other cities to join the Slack.
I've seen that actually, the moderation when people have asked, do you mind if I, I'm not so sure.
No, no, because this idea of hyper local, like we know the design gods of, you know, the well-known names, I'm not even going to name drop, but it's just like this idea of the celebrity status of the designer. There are local people doing amazing things in every city.
Absolutely.
And I would love to champion those things that you're not going to see anywhere. Like, who's going to tell those stories? And it makes it so inaccessible for a young designer thinking, I will make it someday into the echelons of, you know, design godhead. No, there are really cool people in Hamburg doing amazing things, and maybe they just need a little bit of a a kick to come together and have a watering hole where they talk. So
Absolutely. It just kind of reminds me of a story from way back when. I was like a big fan of the Designers Republic, if you remember the Designers Republic, and I got the chance to go to Sheffield, and I found out where I was not stalking. I just happened to be, I think it was in the custard factory, and I happened to be in the same building seeing somebody else, and they told me the Designers Republic is down the corridor, and I was like, oh, what, really? Oh my God. You know, and these are people that super aspired to. These were like heroes, and it was coincidence. But for me to reach out to any of my the people, my peers, the people that I loved, like from other countries or this elitist kind of scene, there was no access.
Yeah.
So my closest I got was peering over the door and thinking, am I going to knock? And I looked and I was like, no, I'm too nervous, and kind of ran away. But the point of the story is, back in the day, it was really, you kind of looked out and hoped that one day. Yeah. But I think with the things that you're doing as well and bringing people together in community allows you to be one step closer when it's just, you can, in a way, hide behind a message, but you can at least prompt somebody and engage and start a conversation. I think that's really, really important.
And that we have to acknowledge the important distinction of cultural differences. I don't know what it's like in the UK, but in the United States, we definitely have a culture of cheesy networking, just like overly ambitious people meeting at a place where there are free drinks and coffee, but like, here's my business card. Can I, really kind of unnaturally sometimes trying to force a connection to happen. And Germany is so completely opposite. I mean, it is so not anti-community, but very. I remember the first time I came to Germany, I was sitting in a Starbucks and I just talked to a random girl. She was like, "What are you doing? What do you want from me?" Like, sorry. It's just natural. You come into conversation very easily in the United States at a bus stop, in a coffee shop, and she just, "Are you homeless? Do you need money? Like, what do you want from me? You don't do this in Germany, Sean." Like, okay, so there is a barrier here for sure in connecting, and to acknowledge that inside of Germany specifically, building community. Maybe in Berlin you have a little bit of a different culture there.
Yeah.
There's like the expat scene, which is pushing that much forward. But in Hamburg, it is not so easy to find that anchor of community and invest in that long term. Yeah.
I always imagine the Hamburg community actually to be full of foreigners. I don't know. I mean, what's the ratio in the community?
Definitely not that. I mean, if we looked at just like Hamburg Design Slack statistics, I would say 70% are Germans, and German transplants, mostly from like around Hamburg, northern Germany to Hamburg, or coming from Berlin. Only about 30% of the people who are really like transplants from other countries. And it might even be from another German-speaking country like Switzerland or Austrians. We have some as well. But for sure, I mean, I made a decision when we started the Slack to speak English there because I thought in terms of accessibility and let's be honest, my German is okay. They understand me, but
mine, mate.
Written, grammatical, perfectionism, people aren't going to take me seriously if I'm writing in terrible German, like updates and trying to moderate, and people are like, oh, what's going on here? So I just we're going to speak English. And now we have all of these expats coming into the community and being so grateful because thank God I can understand some of the information. And to be honest, the Germans are incredible. I mean, from an American perspective, the fact that you know at least 1 to 2 to 3 languages, where the Americans are only learning English, so props to the Germans, but it was just a decision we made, and that's allowed more reach, a broader thing than just doing an event in German, doing a community straight in German.
Yeah, and please, to all the Germans who are watching, stop apologizing for your terrible English, because it's not true.
No.
When you say, I can't a little bit, mate, you can do it, and it's I take my hat off. It's absolutely wonderful. And we are also a community-based channel as well. We won't be here if you guys were not tuning in and watching as well. So leave some comments below if you've had similar experiences, as Sean and I have already spoken about. We would love to hear your stories. Let's move on to the next topic, which is design ethics. Can you explain a little bit what you mean by that?
Well, actually, so if I was trying to make a nice transition from a previous topic, so I just really started getting interested in this idea of what ethics means to designers nowadays. A lot of times we're at an event where you hear really nice intentions to save the world, to change our footprint, carbon footprint, to work sustainably, to invest in sustainable projects. And so often I sit there and maybe this is just kind of my like advocate mind in my head. I'm just like, why? Why? Do we even agree about how the future should look like? Do we really agree on that? And I don't know if we do. I know in our heart, I don't know many designers who are like, I want to destroy the world. I want to design terrible things that are inaccessible and hurt the environment. But no, but really, there's for sure a disconnect and a tension between the ethical or this good feel vibe and the practical intention and display of your design practice when it comes to projects where you're an industrial designer and I'm building millions of plastic things that are going to come into the world and live there for thousands of years. I'm going to design a park bench which homeless people can't sleep on because I was given money to do that, a lot of money to do that. And now I'm just kind of stuck in this world where, do I have an ethical value system? For sure. But where does that get practical, where designers start challenging that? And where I got even more interested in this is when our community talked a little bit about this idea of ethics. And I started getting really upset because I noticed in the design community globally, here in Hamburg, this idea of like the temptation of the sin of elitism, like this idea of there are special design gods that can critique and shit on anything that we see just because we have special knowledge about things, and it's quite exclusive. I'm sure you as a branding studio know this. As soon as a new rebrand comes out from a well-known company, every designer piles on and starts throwing out their comments to like tear it down and shock and dismay and unbelief. And I'm just thinking, like, why? How did we get so arrogant? And how did we get so distant and remove context from these things? There's so many things. And this all, to me, belongs to the idea of challenging our value system. How do we want to be known? Do we want to be known as this elite society of judgmental, arrogant people, artist mentality that's just like, we know, you don't? Or are we really inclusive? Are we going to bring people into the community that need to mature and be nurtured? Do we need to challenge our own ethical basis when we build our products? Like, I don't know if you've said no to a project because... No,
many times.
Yeah.
That's super important.
Yeah, you have to. But many
yeah.
people don't. And I say from the beginning to a young designer, if you want to not do projects that are going to challenge your ethical system, you need to learn to say no very, very early on. Otherwise, you're going to get a slew of projects that you have no control over because you just keep saying yes to everything, right?
Yeah, yeah.
What's your experience with like ethics and value judgments? I'm not talking about morality, like wrong, right. I'm talking about what is your basis for saying, yeah, we'll do this project with you?
I mean, we set up, like, from the very beginning, a set of kind of guiding principles, you know. We all have our own set of beliefs, and we want to create a space that is kind of ethically aligned to that, you know. We don't want, I mean, Jan always says he wants to leave the world a better place than he found it, and I think it's, you know, it's a very short sentence, but it's got a big, large punch to it, and it means many, many things. So we try to be, we try to hold our beliefs true to that kind of guiding light. You know, I'm also vegan as well. So we won't do anything that harms animals or people, or, you know, we try to think about, you know, will the stuff that we do have a positive impact, whether it's on, you know, the care of people, or it's for our planet, or however. We know we can't change everything, but we at least want to have, you know, something that we abide by, and our morality hopefully moves us forward. And everybody that we work with, you know, from Victoria to Magnus as well, they all bring their own set of beliefs, and it's really important to share those and find our own kind of way to move forward.
And that's super important too, because there are so many large differences just in a small design studio of where you came from, what you believe and operate on as an ethical basis for decision making, and then someone totally in a different place in the world, or even just time-based, like when was something ethical, now it's no longer ethical? When were things accepted and not accepted? There's a lot of sensitive like ambiguity that we need to have conversations about. Otherwise, there's no basis for dialogue. You just stick with what you know. But I'm really missing that in the design community in general, this idea of, can we all agree on certain things? Like doctors, they have ethical guidelines that they have to treat a patient if they're dying in the field, even though they might be an enemy soldier. Like, are we going to find principles as the design community to really say, we keep talking about how design has the power to impact the world and change it for a better place, but are you actively participating in a service that's destroying the environment? Can you say, yeah, I make ethical choices working at Amazon or at a place that's super sketchy, or even a local, well, okay, do I want to call things out locally? I don't know. Yeah, I guess there are a certain row of delivery services in Hamburg that totally beat their workers working unrealistic things to provide the best digital service.
Yeah, I think we all know who we're talking about.
Yeah,
for sure.
For you as a consumer, but it is harming the people riding these bikes, like to sweat in 10 minutes, get you what you ordered. I'm thinking, do we not check our own ideas? Is the technology so fascinating, the idea is so convenient that we just disregard ethics? I don't know. I'm really challenged by that.
I also think there's a huge key takeaway, and we talk a lot about this on the channel as well, is that don't forget the impact that you have as a designer. You're not just, you know, making things pretty. You also play a role as well. You're ultimately helping make people make decisions.
Yes.
And painting a world. And you have such a sense of responsibility and a strong position to paint the world in the right way, you know. And don't ever forget that. I think that's super important.
You are in this position as a designer, and constantly through your career, you'll be given choices that you're either on board with this thing or not, and many times that might lead to you not being included in conversations if you make a stand and say, I'm not going to do this. But to be honest, I really have a harsh critique right now for the design community in general, just looking at these things. I mean, let's look at design being used to ethic wash companies. Now suddenly, even the worst companies are sustainable and altruistic and philanthropic and a gas company. Like, how can you say that? And design's being used to empower these people. Like, I don't know how it is in the branding world, but for sure, you can use that to manipulate. Yeah. You can use that to give an image that is so untrue. And that to me is an ethical challenge. Like, are we going to participate in supporting these things, or do they not get access to what we do? Like, do we know our power and use it for good, or do we need to put bread on the table and we do jobs just because it pays well? I don't know.
Like, we're going to leave all the links to everything that we're talking about as well, and also, if you don't mind, like a contact to your good self as well.
Sure.
And also to the Hamburg community, where we can obviously talk about these things as well. Yeah, I think that's super important and really, really interesting topic. And you know what, we could talk about this for a very long time.
So long.
But one thing I'd really like to ask you is about giving back. Mm-hmm. How can we take those first steps, or you know, how can the people in the community, or how can ourselves in the positions that we're in as well, to take that step, to invest in others, mentor, and kind of, you know, help let's not say the next generation, we're not that important, but you know, be there for people, you know, when they have those questions.
Yeah, those are there's this wonderful opportunity where design ethics gets concrete when a young designer looks to an older designer and asks, is this okay? Like, not just quality, but is this all right that we're doing this? I'm being asked to do something that I would never normally do. And I remember so many times in my career where I benefited from the direct impact of others investing into me and sharing not just words of wisdom, things that they wish they would have known from an earlier time as a designer. Absolutely. And I kind of wish this kind of culture would like happen, grassroots movement, like people get into communities, start talking to each other, and then just, students are ambitious or young designers are ambitious and ask the community, can you help me? And in Germany, I think I've realized that there is a bit of a hurdle there where it's like they're waiting for permission to do that. You need to give some sort of a structure or a frame to that to make it actually happen. But I love the idea of getting really concrete there. And not just, that doesn't even just mean giving your time and doing a 10-year mentoring program with someone, but that can be so simple as just going to coffee with someone just starting or giving feedback on their portfolio or just like, where do you want to go? Asking the right questions. Where do you want to be in 3 years? And how can I do anything to help you get there? What agencies and companies should you avoid in Hamburg that are going to pay you terribly and treat you bad, like make you do unethical things? That's a great place to talk and get really honest. Like, really, I would have...
Stop the burnout before the burnout happens.
Yeah, no joke.
Yeah, for sure.
I would have been so grateful if someone had told me, these three just stay away from them, please. And there's so many concrete things. And the only thing that I'm kind of missing there from our community is this, I'm ready to mentor, and from the opposite side, I want to be mentored. And mentorship works also both ways. Like we have this old model of like the older, wiser giving the younger. My God, how many times does a younger pup show you something that they're doing? You're like, that's inspiring. That's amazing. Holy cow, I have energy. I remember my first love in design and I want to go back to that.
100%.
Like this mentorship relationship is such a practical way to dive deep into giving back and being a bit selfless, like not just being focused on you and your own initiatives and your social media presence. Like get practical, do something, help someone out. And so, for example, for our Hamburg design community, what I would love to do next year is like go straight to the schools. There are 10 design universities in Hamburg doing different things. And there are at least 10 seniors coming out of those classes and going into the design world. That's like 100 people every year released into the design world in Hamburg. Mm-hmm. You should start there. Like designers should be going there and talking and having realistic conversations with them. Were you told how to do taxes in your school? Were you told how to navigate like ethical decisions and how to network and how to have, I don't know, were you?
No.
So, yeah. I mean, there's so much practical stuff there. There's this concept of, like, I come from a faith background, and there's this concept of, like, giving your time and money to the church or to your organization, your local organization, to stimulate growth there. And I think designers... what if we just give like 10% of our time to younger people or to people around us, invested in a nonprofit with my money or my time, do a free, no, not a free logo, but maybe, I don't know, just give like a hand up. You've done things like that, right?
Yeah. I mean, we're active in that. We take on 2, maybe 3 projects a year mm-hmm. since we started, where we support businesses, mm-hmm. people, entrepreneurs who are trying to do something good, who don't necessarily have the budget that we would, normally ask for to mm-hmm. do such a project. Of course, it's not to the same scale, but we hopefully empower and give them some of our skills and also enable them as well to make better, more smarter, bigger decisions to move their business forward. Yeah. And I think that's really important. It's not about portfolio. It's not about anything. It's about helping. Yeah. And I suppose in a way you get to kind of sharpen your experiences and your expertise and also try some things out because mm-hmm. normally the people that you're working with are open to be a bit more experimental.
Absolutely.
So that's also cool. Don't wait for the projects that you would love to do. Just go out there and do them, mm-hmm. find them, help and mm-hmm. help to support. Yeah,
there's some local people in Hamburg doing that, like some organizations. The Kreativgesellschaft in Hamburg is doing a really good job to open those opportunities up. They have a Creative Future Academy, which is like a one-to-one mentoring creatives to business people, pretty much not for free for the business people, but we get paid to do that. That's a more like structured mentoring process. But I would really just like encourage every designer in the world, anyone listening to this, like it is so easy and practical to, when you see a young designer invest in their lives, it will change their world. Like, wow, someone cares about my future. Someone wants to invest in me. And that starts locally. That can go much further than that. Like you said, we have these design ideas like Design Republic, Sagmeister, like Paula Scher, like all of these people who are like, oh, you've influenced so much. Yeah, and they spend a lot of time giving back and investing in others. You can be that too for someone else. I'm waiting for the United National German Association that's pushing these things. That doesn't really exist there. Like this idea of like a...
That's funny, actually. I talked with Alex about that in the last video. So no, maybe there's a round table.
There's a synergy. Yes.
Yeah. But I think we have to wrap it up there. Sean, very, very inspiring as always. I love getting the chance to sit down and talk with you about these topics. And today we managed to get it on camera for everyone else to get the chance to listen. I hope we'll have the chance to explore these topics even more in the future. And maybe you'll come back for another video. I hope you enjoyed your time with us.
Yeah, thanks for having the courage to develop a platform like this. Not everyone is willing to take those steps and put themselves out there. I know for young designers especially, that's like the most intimidating thing. Show my portfolio, show my work, expose myself. You're creating and influencing the culture. In German you say prägen. Like you're like changing and slowly like, I feel like you're doing that in the design community.
Thank you.
So thank you.
That's very, very kind. And it's not easy for me either. Like I'm not as young as I used to be, a bit of an old dog, and it still can be quite nerve-wracking. But we feel like it's really important to represent our community, bringing people like yourself here to share your knowledge and hopefully inspire.
Nice.
So that just about wraps it up for another video. I'd just like to take this chance once more to ask you to subscribe. It really helps us to continue to make content like this and to grow the channel. Also like the video if you like the video. And as always, we will see you in the next one. Peace.